She quickly turned into a side corridor, held her breath. The soldiers passed and went. Ruslana breathed, but the danger hadn't passed yet. Other footsteps were coming from the other end of the corridor. This time, it was different, heavier, more majestic. And just then, the person she encountered was the chief eunuch. "Am I seeing you around here again?" he snapped. "Chief eunuch, This time, you'll face punishment." But just then, a voice from behind the chief eunuch froze them both. "What's happening here?" That deep, authoritative voice. The chief eunuch immediately bowed. "My sultan, this concubine is wandering against the rules." And Ruslana, at that moment of her fate, saw him at the other end of the corridor, Sultan Suleiman Han. Could Aleksandra capture the Sultan's attention with her cunning plan that evening? But the real question was, could this plan truly lead her to the Padishah's chamber? The first rule Aleksandra learned during those freezing, cold Ukrainian nights was simple: the strong survive. Throughout this arduous journey from slave markets to palace corridors, she knew no one would show mercy. Now known by the name Ruslana, this young girl had managed to stand firm in the world's most powerful palace. As the opportunity to appear before the Sultan approached, it was time to use her only weapon, that enchanting voice. And to win this game, she was ready to risk everything. "Girls, tomorrow evening there will be a song recital in our Sultan's presence." When Shah Sultan Hatun's voice echoed through the harem corridors, it was like a bomb had exploded. All the concubines embraced each other with excitement. This was the most important opportunity of their lives, to perform before the Sultan. Ruslana stood in the corner, watching this enthusiasm. But the sparkle in her eyes was different. This wasn't just excitement. It was determination. "Layla," she whispered, now mixing Turkish words. "This is our chance." Layla looked in amazement. Are you speaking Turkish?" Ruslana smiled. Over the past few weeks, she had focused day and night on learning Turkish. Her language ability was astonishing. Within a few weeks, she had become able to construct basic sentences. "Yes," said Ruslana. Layla said, "But it's very difficult. The Sultan is very selective." "Difficult?" That familiar smile appeared on Ruslana's lips. "I love difficult things." This rapid learning ability of Ruslana's had begun to be noticed in the palace. Even Shah Sultan Hatun looked at her with admiration. This girl wasn't just beautiful. She was also extraordinarily intelligent. That evening, as the girls began their preparations, Ruslana followed a different strategy. While the others thought about their costumes and makeup, she went out to explore the garden. Which corner would carry sound better? Which way was the wind blowing? Which route did the Sultan use? "Where is this girl going like this?" wondered Gulsum, following her. What Ruslana discovered surprised her. She wasn't just going to sing. It was as if she was making battle plans. The next day, the preparation excitement was at its peak. But Ruslana's confident attitude had begun to disturb some. "What does this Russian girl think she is?" whispered Gulsum to her friends. "She acts as if she's already enchanted the Sultan." "We need to do something," said another concubine. "This girl is dangerous." And at that moment, they hatched a treacherous plan. At noon, while Ruslana was studying Turkish in her room, Gulsum ran to Shah Sultan Hatun. "My Sultan, I found forbidden things in Ruslana's room." "What kind of things?" asked Shah Sultan Hatun, frowning. "Letters in her old language. Maybe she's..." Gulsum whispered in a low voice, maybe she's a spy. When this slander spread, the atmosphere of the harem changed. Shah Sultan Hatun summoned Ruslana. "What are these accusations?" she asked in a stern voice. Ruslana entered the room calmly. There was no fear in her eyes, only cold determination. "Which accusations, my sultan?" she said, her Turkish surprisingly fluent. "It's claimed that forbidden letters were found in your room." Ruslana understood the situation, but this slander, instead of frightening her, had made her even stronger. "My sultan," she said, her voice calm but sharp. "If the person accusing me can prove their claim, I accept my punishment. But if they're lying," she turned her eyes to Gulsum, "then I would like to see their punishment as well." This courage surprised everyone. Gulsum was drenched in sweat. When the room was searched, of course nothing was found. Ruslana was innocent, but more importantly, she had emerged stronger from this situation. "Gulsum," said Shah Sultan Hatun angrily, "making false accusations is a very serious crime." Gulsum's punishment was to do servant work for a week. Ruslana's prestige in the harem increased after this incident. That evening, she approached Gulsum. "Next time," she said in a soft but threatening voice, "make a more clever plan." When Gulsum saw that cold glint in her eyes, she trembled. This girl was truly dangerous. While these events were taking place, the most powerful woman in the harem, Mahidevran Sultan, was watching everything from afar. Mahidevran wasn't just beautiful. She was a legend of beauty. This Circassian woman, with her golden hair, green eyes, and perfect body curves, had been the Sultan's favorite for years. But her real power was much more than her beauty. She was the mother of Prince Mustafa, and Mustafa was the Sultan's only male child, the sole heir to the throne. This made Mahidevran untouchable. Everyone in the palace knew her power. The woman who spent the most time in the Sultan's bed, who knew his secrets, whose opinion was sought even in state affairs, the undisputed queen of the harem. Mahidevran had noticed Ruslana and was beginning to feel disturbed by this newly arrived Russian girl. "Nigar," she said to her close friend, "what do you know about this girl called Ruslana? She has a beautiful voice, seems intelligent. She learned Turkish very quickly." But Nigar Kalfa hesitated. "But what?" "A bit different, not like the other girls." Nigar was searching for the right words, as if there's a devilish glint in her eyes. Mahidevran's green eyes sparkled. "Interesting, very interesting." When evening came, the garden was prepared. Moonlight illuminated everything with a silvery brilliance. The concubines had put on their most beautiful dresses, braided their hair, and were ready. Ruslana stood strategically in the place she had chosen, the exact center of the garden, the point where sound would carry best, and the closest place to the corridor the Sultan passed through after evening prayers. Hours passed. The first performances began. Beautiful voices, but not the effect Ruslana had planned. The Sultan still hadn't appeared. "I wonder if he won't come," whispered a concubine. Ruslana tensed. Questions swirled inside her. What if he doesn't come? What if I can't make my voice heard? Is it really so important to make the Padishah hear my voice? But then she pulled herself together. Whatever happens, I'm different from the girls here. I'll distinguish myself. I'll find a way and overcome my cursed fate. When the evening call to prayer was recited, the Sultan prayed in the palace. Ruslana's ears were on the corridor, and then she heard those footsteps. Now, she thought, right now. When her turn came, she took the stage. But the Sultan wasn't visible in the garden yet. He was in the corridor, passing by. Ruslana was waiting for that critical moment of her plan, her ears focused on the footsteps in the corridor. And she began. The song she chose was a passionate Ukrainian folk song. But she had blended this folk song with the modes of Turkish music. She had combined the Ukrainian melodic structure with the deep emotionality of Turkish music. It was as if two cultures were meeting in her voice. This time, she had also specially adjusted her voice. That voice would reach not only those in the garden, but that person walking in the corridor. Her voice pierced the silence of the night. It was so intense, so affecting that everyone in the garden was enchanted. The footsteps in the corridor had stopped. He heard. She strengthened her voice even more. She wasn't just singing anymore. She was pouring out her soul. Each note was like an invitation. See me, hear me, notice me. And at that moment, she felt the energy of a presence approaching from the corridor toward the garden. She couldn't see yet, but her instincts told her who was coming. At the entrance of the garden, in the darkness, a powerful silhouette had appeared. That silhouette radiated such authority that the entire energy of the garden had changed. He came, but the Sultan hadn't shown himself yet. Instead, another majestic shadow had come. Valide Sultan Ayşe Hafsa Hatun. The Sultan's mother was the most powerful woman in the empire. One look from her could change fates. All women in the harem showed her absolute respect. Valide Sultan had listened to Ruslana's performance, and she was impressed. "Who is this girl?" she asked Shah Sultan Hatun in a low voice. "Ruslana, my sultan. She came from Ukraine, very talented." Valide Sultan nodded. There was something different about this girl. Ruslana had sensed Valide Sultan's presence and had bowed to her respectfully. But what she really wondered was where the Sultan was. As the night progressed, the Sultan didn't appear. Ruslana was disappointed, but capturing Valide Sultan's attention was also a success. When the performance ended, as the concubines returned to their rooms, Ruslana stayed in the garden a little longer. In the moonlight, she was looking at the corridors, and at that moment, a strange feeling arose within her, as if someone was watching her. In one of the corridors, a shadow had moved. Was it him? She had a feeling inside that she had made her voice heard. Maybe she hadn't seen, but she was sure the voice had reached. That night, the concubines had gathered in their rooms, discussing the night. Ruslana's performance was on everyone's lips. "She sang very beautifully," said one. "Even Valide Sultan liked it," said another. When Mahidevran heard these conversations, she became angry. She came out of her room to talk with the concubines. "There were very beautiful performances tonight," she said, but her voice was cold. "Especially Ruslana, wasn't it?" Ruslana stood up. "My sultan. Voice isn't the only virtue in this palace." "Of course, my sultan," said Ruslana respectfully. "Here," continued Mahidevran, "being talented alone isn't enough. One must also know one's place." Faced with this open threat, Ruslana remained calm. "I know my place very well, my sultan, and that place becomes clearer every day." This answer surprised Mahidevran. "Interesting," said Mahidevran. "You're a very interesting girl." She couldn't add more, because this girl showed no lack of respect. With an indefinable intuition, Mahidevran rolled her eyes. The next evening, Ruslana had developed a new strategy. This time, her plan was more complex. Every evening, at the same time, she began singing in that specific corner of the garden, to see that shadow in the corridor, only with her voice and moonlight as companions. The first evening, nothing happened. The second evening, she sensed movement in the corridor, but couldn't be sure. The third evening, that shadow had appeared more clearly. He's listening, thought Ruslana. Every evening, he's listening and wondering. This was a game, complex, dangerous, but enchanting. She was singing for that voice, that shadow now. Every evening she felt him getting a little closer. On the fourth evening, she knew for certain. He was standing in that corridor, listening to her. On the morning of the fifth day, Ruslana had gone out to explore the palace again. But this time, she encountered someone unexpected. "You," the chief eunuch's voice echoed in the corridor. "Where are you wandering around like this?" Ruslana's heart skipped a beat. She was standing before the palace's chief eunuch. "Forgive me, chief eunuch. I was just what? Concubines don't wander around the palace without permission. Don't you know these rules?" "I do, chief eunuch, but I was looking for a book to learn Turkish." The chief eunuch looked her up and down. There was something strange about this girl. "A book? Well, which book are you looking for?" "About Ottoman history. I want to learn about our Ottomans' great victories." This answer surprised the chief eunuch. Most concubines weren't interested in such things. Interesting. But still, wandering without permission is forbidden. If you do such a thing again, the punishment will be severe. "I understand, chief eunuch. I apologize." As the chief eunuch walked away, Ruslana breathed. This warning hadn't frightened her. It had only reminded her that she needed to be more careful. She would find a way to show herself, one way or another. If she waited, time would work against her. Every day, many new slave girls were coming to the harem. Her rivals were increasing. She would act quickly and take another step forward. She wasn't afraid that the Padishah was already married and had a prince. What kind of crazy courage was this? But even if he was married, why did the Padishah have a harem? It meant he was open to falling in love, to having fun. Could Suleiman be madly in love with this beautiful Mahidevran? Or was Hürrem's biggest rival not these harem girls, but the beauty on the throne? That day, when she was alone in her room, Ruslana repeatedly constructed that encounter moment in her head. If it happens like this, I'll say this to him. Then he'll ask this, and I'll answer that. She thought through every scenario, evaluated every possibility. That voice, that shadow, was now the center of her life. If he notices me, what will I say? How will I behave? If I seem too excited, I'll appear weak. If I'm too cold, I'll lose his interest. She got lost in these thoughts for hours. She imagined that encounter moment so many times that she felt as if she was really living it. The next morning, Ruslana had gotten up early again, deciding to be much more careful this time, watching for times when the chief eunuch wasn't around, and went out to explore the palace. While walking through one of the long corridors, she heard footsteps coming from ahead. Many footsteps, heavy boots. Her heart began to race. This time, it was soldiers, janissaries. She quickly turned into a side corridor, held her breath. The soldiers passed and went. Ruslana breathed, but the danger hadn't passed yet. Other footsteps were coming from the other end of the corridor. This time, it was different, heavier, more majestic. And just then, the person she encountered was the chief eunuch. "Am I seeing you around here again?" he snapped. "Chief eunuch, This time, you'll face punishment." But just then, a voice from behind the chief eunuch froze them both. "What's happening here?" That deep, authoritative voice. The chief eunuch immediately bowed. "My sultan." This concubine is wandering against the rules. And Ruslana, at that moment of her fate, saw him at the other end of the corridor. Sultan Suleiman Han. Time stopped. All the scenarios Ruslana had constructed in her head were forgotten at that moment. The most powerful man in the world was standing before her, and she couldn't say anything. The Sultan had also seen her. He looked at the chief eunuch, then at Ruslana. "Who are you?" he asked. As the distance between them decreased, Ruslana felt a fire in her body that she had never known. Was this fear, excitement, or something completely different? The Sultan's handsomeness was legendary. That powerful stance, that deep gaze, that magnetic attraction, the huge turban on his head was majestic, very majestic. How and why had they encountered each other here? At that moment, Ruslana couldn't do any of the things she had planned. She was so overwhelmed with excitement that her eyes closed, and she let herself go where she stood. And at that moment, in front of the Sultan, she fainted from excitement. The last thing she saw were the Sultan's worried eyes. The last thing she felt was the moment his strong arms caught her. The last thing she heard was that deep voice shouting, "Someone come." When Ruslana opened her eyes, she found herself in the Sultan's arms. Those strong arms were carrying her. The chief eunuch was gone. Only the two of them behind them, 10 steps behind the Sultan. Guards stood like statues. She would have to get used to not counting them as people. For a moment, she couldn't be sure if it was a dream or reality. "My Sultan," she whispered. "Be calm," said the Sultan. There was real concern in his voice. "I'm taking you to the physician." No need," said Ruslana, trying to pull herself together. "I'm fine." The Sultan gently set her on her feet, but didn't completely withdraw his hands. "Are you sure? You look very pale." This concern. Ruslana understood that this was going beyond her plan. "I'm fine, my Sultan. Just..." What should she say? Whatever answer she gave could put her in an embarrassing situation. "I just felt dizzy. I don't know. Perhaps you were frightened." Ruslana blushed. "I was seeing you so closely for the first time." This sincerity also affected the Sultan. This girl wasn't like the other concubines. She wasn't artificial. She was natural. Now he had begun to examine this concubine a bit more. There was something about this girl. Beauty was insufficient to describe it. He had seen dozens, hundreds of beautiful girls. They were all at his disposal in his own harem every day. Finding even a girl he could imagine wasn't difficult at all. Dozens, hundreds of girls from various ethnic groups from all over the world. Their talents were abundant too. He had been familiar with all kinds of beauty since childhood. So what made this girl special? She had fiery red hair, pure white clear skin. Her large, sparkling, colourful eyes told fairy tales. From her neck to her throat, pure beauty. A very thin waist. She didn't walk, she glided. She didn't look, she spoke with her eyes. "Are you the girl who sang last night?" asked the Sultan. Yes, my Sultan," she said, with both shame and secret joy in her voice. "An interesting melody," said the Sultan. "A type I haven't heard before." "It was a Ukrainian folk song, my Sultan, but I blended it with your music." A slight smile appeared on the Sultan's face. Clever. This simple word had changed Ruslana's world. The Sultan had appreciated her intelligence. "What's your name?" asked the Sultan. "Ruslana, my Sultan. Ruslana." The Sultan rolled this name on his lips. "Interesting. You're an interesting girl too." "Thank you, my Sultan," she said, lowering her eyes to the ground. "Lift your head," said the Sultan. "Don't be afraid to look at me." When Ruslana lifted her head, what she saw in the Sultan's eyes surprised her. There was curiosity there, maybe even a bit of interest. This encounter was so intense that Ruslana couldn't distinguish between reality and fantasy. This moment, which she had planned for weeks and constructed many times in her head, had now become real. "Do you wander around here aimlessly?" asked the Sultan, but there was no harshness in his voice. "No, my Sultan. I had gone out for a task. I was returning," said Ruslana. "Still, pay attention to the harem rules," said Suleiman. "Of course, my Sultan," she said, and withdrew with a curtsy. The Sultan turned his back. As Ruslana watched the Sultan's retreating figure disappear around the marble corridor, her heart still thundered like war drums. The encounter had lasted mere minutes, yet it felt as though her entire world had shifted on its axis. She pressed her back against the cool palace wall, trying to steady her breathing. "He noticed me," she thought, a dangerous smile playing at her lips. More than noticed, he was concerned, curious, interested. The way his eyes had lingered on her face, the gentle tone when he told her not to be afraid to look at him, these were not the actions of a man merely fulfilling his duty. These were the actions of a man intrigued. But questions swirled in her mind like autumn leaves in a storm. When would she see him again? The harem had hundreds of girls, and the Sultan's attention was the most precious commodity in the empire. One encounter, no matter how promising, meant nothing if it couldn't be built upon. As she made her way back through the corridors, Ruslana's mind was already racing ahead, calculating, planning. The evening song recitals would continue. She would ensure her voice remained in his memory. But more than that, she needed to find ways to distinguish herself further. Intelligence, he had called her clever. That was her true weapon, sharper than beauty alone. She thought of Mahidevran Sultan, with her golden hair and established power. The woman had years of advantage, a prince son, and the Sultan's documented affections. Yet something in Suleiman's eyes today suggested his heart wasn't entirely closed to new possibilities. Every great conquest begins with a single step, Ruslana reminded herself, her grandmother's words echoing from those cold Ukrainian nights. And today, I took that step. As she reached the harem quarters, she found the other concubines buzzing with whispers. Word had somehow spread that she had encountered the Sultan in the corridors. Their eyes followed her with mixtures of envy, curiosity, and calculation. "Ruslana," Layla approached cautiously. "Is it true? Did you really see the Sultan?" Before she could answer, Gulsum appeared, her face twisted with barely concealed rage. "Some girls think they're special," she hissed loud enough for others to hear. "But the Sultan speaks to many concubines. It means nothing." Ruslana met her gaze steadily. "You're absolutely right, Gulsum. Actions mean far more than words, and results mean more than either." That evening, as Ruslana prepared for sleep, she carefully replayed every moment of the encounter. The way his strong arms had caught her, the concern in his voice, the curiosity in his eyes when she'd mentioned blending Ukrainian and Turkish music. Most telling of all was what hadn't happened. He hadn't dismissed her, hadn't shown irritation at finding a concubine wandering freely. Instead, he'd shown mercy, interest, and something that might have been the first stirrings of attraction. From her window, she could see the Sultan's private chambers across the courtyard. Lamplight flickered behind the ornate screens. Was he thinking of their encounter? Or had she already faded from his thoughts? Just another face among hundreds. No, she decided firmly. Today was just the beginning. I am no longer simply Aleksandra the slave, or even Ruslana the concubine. Today, I became a possibility. Tomorrow, I become inevitable. The path to becoming Hürrem Sultan, the joyous one, had begun, and Ruslana had no intention of allowing anyone, not Mahidevran, not Gulsum, not even fate itself, to prevent her from reaching her destiny. As sleep finally claimed her, one last thought flickered through her mind. When I see him again, and I will see him again, I'll be ready. The game had begun, and she intended to win. What new strategy will Ruslana devise to secure another meeting with the Sultan? How will Mahidevran respond when she learns of this encounter? And most importantly, has the mighty Suleiman Han truly begun to fall under the spell of the red-haired girl from Ukraine? The answers await in the corridors of power, where love and ambition dance their eternal, dangerous dance.